Hey folks, welcome back. We're here with Coleman Boyd, who is running for Mississippi State Senator right here in District 26. And in this video, we'd like to discuss criminal justice. So this is a big issue facing our nation as well. Jails are being overrun, full of people that our government has said are criminals. And so we need to get into the topic of what is a crime. So let's start off with that one. Coleman, what does the Bible say a crime is?
That is a great place to start. Most of what we call criminal activity takes place in a victimless setting. According to the God who created government, the God who defines what is right and wrong, there is no penalty when there is no victim. So there may be laws or guidelines to give us direction of do this, don't do this, but if there is no victim, there is no crime to punish. And so when we're talking about crime in our society, if we don't have a victim, then we don't have a crime. And for example, someone arbitrarily declares the speed limit is 50 miles an hour in an area. That is an area that, okay, I want to be safe, so I don't want to harm someone. When I drive 51 miles an hour, I'm not a criminal. There's no victim, no one is harmed, and that is a very small example, but if you go into our city courts, victimless crimes take up most of what is going on in the courtroom today.
As we deal with the idea of what a victimless crime is, or a crime that does create a victim, what does the Bible say about how to punish those crimes? Let's start with crimes that do create victims, because according to the biblical definition, that is what a crime is. So let's focus on that today in this video.
Okay.
What does God say to do to punish those kind of crimes?
Okay. Well, you've got different types of ways to punish crimes. Certain crimes are crimes worthy of death, and God is very clear about that, and we need to go down that road. But also, there are crimes such as stealing where restitution is a needful thing. The way we have it set up, if you rob me, I am the victim, you are the criminal. There is a victim. You've stolen from me $1,000. So what happens? I get arrested, tax dollars are spent to take me to court, prove I'm guilty, and then I'm put in prison. Guess who's robbed again? You're robbed again to pay for me to be in prison. Now, I'm not going to give you any restitution. I'm a criminal in the prison system, and you're paying my way of life, and there's no restitution. God's design for this is, I rob you, now I owe you restitution. That is the penalty for that crime. It's not a violent crime, it's just I steal from you, and therefore I have to give you restitution. And there's lots of details that can be worked out in those laws, how that looks. But that dissuades people, that rehabilitates people from stealing versus taking the criminal, the thief, and putting him in a cage with other criminals so that they now hone their craft, all the while there's no restitution. Down the road of violent crimes such as murder, rape, kidnapping, God is very clear, and we believe our laws need to be very clear. Every person convicted of murder by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every person convicted of kidnapping by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every person convicted of rape by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses needs to be swiftly put to death. Ecclesiastes 8 says, when the penalty for a crime is delayed or put off, the hearts of the sons of men are given over to do evil. So while we have about 22,000 murders per year in the United States, we put to death about 18 to 20 people per year. That's 0.01%, if I remember correctly. And that's after an average of 20 years. So the penalty is not being carried out properly. The murderer is being caged like an animal and living out the rest of his days most of the time. The few that are put to death is after 20 years. There's no swift justice. And what we see is the hearts of the sons of men, the hearts of our population are given over towards more and more violence because we're not wielding the sword as the government that God commanded us to.
So we seem to live in this culture where the justice system has completely failed, if there's any success, in incredibly small numbers, but has mostly completely failed towards dealing with the 3 major ones that you mentioned there: murder, kidnapping, and rape. So tell us a little bit, just briefly explain as my last question here in this video, briefly explain the effect that this has on society when a government justly punishes crime according to God's law, right? The focus is always on the criminal and the punishment that they deserve, but what is the effect that this has on society?
Right, so you've got multiple effects. One, when people start talking about, oh, you're not showing mercy by giving the death penalty, for example. Well, that actually is very merciful. It's merciful, I think, towards the criminal because he knows there's a swift judgment and it brings him to a point of repentance and change. But it also is mercy to the remainder of the population. The person that would be murdered by him or someone else, that person is saved. The person who would be given over to murder sees the criminal punished properly, and their heart is not given over to do evil, so there's mercy there. And that goes when you're talking about rape, when you're talking about kidnapping, when you're talking about murder. All of the effects from that one action not being properly dealt with to the number of victims that are not going to be affected in the future and towards the number of perpetrators who will not be perpetrators in the future is a vast amount of mercy that is shown. So it's actually very merciful to a society. Not only that, I believe that it tenders the heart towards the things of God, which will be the principal foundation of what we're running on, and that is that righteousness exalts a nation. For the hearts of people to turn to the Lord and for righteousness to abound in our land, we've got to turn the hearts from criminal behavior towards the things of God.